Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Now doing the top 50, of course, modern progressive art rock albums. Left off yesterday at number 41 with everything. So I don't know. I wanted to do 10 more yesterday. Wasn't able to. The same I may only be able to do 10 a day and just wrap it up on Friday. I'm not sure. We'll see. Anyway, so we're leaving off with everything next. Number 41, number 40, Umphrey's McGee's Mantis. From 2009. This is my favorite Umphrey's McGee album, studio album, and I'm gonna post the entire list at the end of this whole thing. There's an album they have called Anchor Drops I didn't include. I don't know. I just kind of missed it when I was going through my lists. But it's toward the end. It's many steps down. But that's my second favorite record. Their new record might be number 3. I really like the record from 2022. But Mantis itself, from a band that I sort of was going back and forth between live and studio, clearly prove that they are a very good studio band at times. Cemetery Walk and Cemetery Walk 2 are both memorable and catchy. There are earworms all over those songs. Also, the title track, which is almost 12 minutes, very proggy. I know some comments about Spock's beard. They do kind of sound a little bit like Spock's beard on this album, but in a good way. Turn and Run, Spires, Red Tape. This is production's great on this. The sort of the piano and the synthesizers and sort of just the dynamics. What did I write down? It was my number one record in 2009 for a little while because it came out really early. I was hoping that we would see an Umphrey's McGee album about this level every record since, but fortunately it didn't happen. But although they've done some other records, Similar Skin is pretty good, and except the new one. But yeah, Mantis from 2009 is a terrific record. I go back to songs at least pretty regularly, and so that kind of also means it stood the test of time pretty well. So anyway, Umphrey's McGee, number 40 from 2009. Number 39, Deadwing from Porcupine Tree from 2005. Interesting enough, I just saw it earlier, just literally within the last hour. Porcupine Tree, this album's going to be coming out as like a deluxe with a book, DVD, a live performance, and everything like that. Coming out March 3rd, 2023. Whether I pick it up or not, I don't know. I do love this record. At one point, I think I probably consider this my favorite Porcupine Tree record. Not spoiling anything, but, I'm not saying it is and isn't. But it has a lot of their sort of the 2000s favorites. The follow from In Absentia, which I had in the list a little while ago. Arriving Somewhere But Not Here is... Push Comes to Shove is probably my favorite Porcupine Tree song. That's a great proggy sort of with dynamics and different sections. Of course, it has the guitar solo from Michael Ackerfeld, which kind of climax, but just that riff and that haunting riff, that dun dun dun. I never get it out of my head. The other huge highlight on this album is Lazarus, the ballad, which sounds like it totally should have been on radio. It's melancholy, but sort of uplifting in a similar way. Follow me down to the valley below. I know my friend John mentioned he thought it sounded like Coldplay, but I don't think Coldplay, as much as they have some songs I like, ever did anything as good as that song. The title track, Shallow, Halo. I always think of Napoleon Dynamite for some reason. That was around the time Napoleon Dynamite was everywhere. And also, there's a Dredge song from another album that same year that has a similar kind of rhythm in the bridge. I think it is. Melatonin Scratch, and then Start of Something Beautiful is probably my third favorite song. I mean, the outro to that is just great. Open Car is pretty epic. This is, and it was based on a script, I guess, that Stephen Ann, his art guy, Lassie Hawley, had done and collaboratively written for a film that never got made, and they were trying to fund at one point. Although I thought I saw that they did like a short film within the last year or two that was supposed to sort of fit that. but yeah, I mean, it is sort of cinematic in a lot of ways. But musically, I think it stands out in some ways. It's to me, it kind of was the peak of that period of time. But is it a perfect record? No, I wouldn't say it's absolutely perfect. But I listened to this a ton in 2005. It was one of my most listened albums from that year for sure, and that for a year that's got a ton of albums I love. So, Deadwing from Porcupine Tree, number 39. Number 38, among all the other Foals record, this is the top Foals album, Total Life Forever, from 2010. This has, like Deadwing with Arriving Somewhere, but not here, this has Spanish Sahara. I have, of course, the vinyl pulled up here. Spanish Sahara, which is, my and many other accounts still maybe my favorite song. It is maybe their proggiest track in some ways. The build on that is just goosebump worthy. Every time I get goosebumps hearing that song, and I think it's even better live. I never can get that guitar sort of lead out of my head, that motif out of my head. But and that was the initial, the first single they put out, I think, or maybe the second one. They put it out pretty early before the record came out, and I was sort of on the fence about Foals at the time, and that song totally made me a fan, like supplanted my fandom. But then I got to listening to the whole record. Now the other single was Disorient, which I don't hate it, but it sounds a little overtly math rock, like math rock pop, and by that song I was kind of like, well, this is kind of like their last record, but maybe not even as good. So I was sort of, Spanish Sahara kind of made it, but then I went and listened to the rest of the record, and turned out I think Disorient is the worst song on this record, even though it's not a terrible track. But between Blue Blood, Miami, Black Gold, Afterglow, and Alabaster, there's just so many like dreamy, mesmerizing moments on this album, and it's sort of almost like grown with time. Like it's appreciated. It's become a fan favorite, and I think it's their highest rated record actually on Rate Your Music. It was always like after this came out. Yeah, it's not bolded, which is weird. It's their most rated album, and it's kind of this between that and the debut Antidotes. But yeah, I mean, I love this album, Total Life Forever. I don't know. Someday it may find 5 stars. I may just say, bleep it. It's gonna find the 5-star. It's that good. I mean, this Orient is still not a terrible song. It's just sort of all the other songs around it are so good. And it's like less is more. It's not very. I mean, what is this? 50 minutes, like a perfect length. So the thing that sucks is I had tickets to see them on this tour and I didn't go. Because the same night Menomina was in town and Janelle Monáe next door at the end at the main room opening for of Montreal. So I've seen them like 4 or 5 times. They just played here a few weeks ago and I didn't go because the venue is not. It was like a week ago. Not an area I desire necessarily to go to at night right now. But anyway, Foals, Total Life Forever, number 38 on the modern progressive art rock albums list. So. Going down the list, number 37, what do we have? Anathema with Weather Systems, a highly beloved record by the progressive rock scene, and it pretty much, from 2012 and Weather Systems, it pretty much warrants it. I'm not saying this is my favorite Anathema record, but I totally understand why people love this album, and at some point I may kind of flip with some of their records, a little bit like some other bands. It's got the Untouchable 1 and Untouchable 2 sort of suite, which opens the record with great energy and a crescendo that's great. Which is, kind of this, the way they kind of started writing music in the 2010s. They did a lot of, like, with those dynamics and the repeated riffs that just kind of, that get louder and more, build layer upon layer. The Storm Before the Calm is another great part of this record, The Lost Child. And Internal Landscape, of course, it has the real melancholy, sad part at the end with the guy talking about someone dying or how he died and he came back and all this stuff. It's very spiritual. I'll admit that I love this record. I think people have hyped it up a lot. And even the band themselves in their transition right now might be naming themselves this. I might kind of embrace it and just say, no, this is their best thing they've ever done. So anyway, Weather Systems from Anathema. It was on the first album, the second album they released on Casco, but I think this album got them more attention than the previous record. But anyway, and it really kind of redefined their sound. This album, the last album, redefined their sound for the progressive rock community. I mean, they don't even have metal as a style listed on here, although it gets heavy. As my friend Josh from Heavy Debris Fins previously, that drummer guy, talked about how having a lot of power. It does have a lot of power, but the dynamics are off the charts, and the vocal arrangements, the male female. I think this is the first album they had with Lee. I know I don't think she was on the previous record. Lee Douglas. Let's see, where does, and then again, she might not have been she's not listed on here, is she? Vince, Danny, John Douglas. Unless she changed. Oh, there she is. Oh, she's actually been in the band longer than I realized. I don't know, I started to notice her more on this album and the albums that came after it anyway. Number 37, Weather Systems from Anathema from 2012. Number 36, Fair to Midland's Fables from a Mayfly, What I Tell You These Three Times Is True from 2007. An album I just played the crap out of. I just played it. I don't know, I played it probably 80 times the summer and fall of 2007. I saw them live so many times. I kept on listening to it. I saw them live like 4 times in 2007 alone, I think. This was produced by David Bottrill, with his background between Dream Theater and I Mother Earth and Peter Gabriel and King Crimson and Silverchair. Many others, Coheed and Cambria. It was a big step up. It was signed. They were signed to Serge Tankian's Surgical Strike Records, which got more distribution. The song Dance of the Manatee got some radio play and more exposure. Half of the songs on here, Dance of the Manatee, Kyla Cries Cologne, Vice Versa, Seafarer's Not, Walls of Jericho, and Upgrade Brigade. All those songs were on Interfund to Stifle, the previous album. But they re-recorded them, and while those songs have charm on the original recordings, they have their charm on this in terms of it's a bigger sounding production, and it works. I mean, this is Darrow Andrew Sutter's soaring vocals, the range he uses, the dynamics, Cliff's guitar tones, Matt Langley's keys. The songwriting is just terrific. And the new songs, I always think of them as the new songs. The Wife, the Kids, and the White Picket Fence, April Fools and Eggman, Tall Tales, Taste Like Sour Grapes, and Say When are all, they all kind of go really cohesively with this album. It's just an addictive album, one of those records that you can listen to beginning to end and just enjoy song after song. I mean, my favorites, I guess I'd put down Walls of Jericho. I thought was a single, one of the catchiest songs on the album. That, Vice Versa has that cool dynamic. That. I don't know. I mean, I favor certain ones over the other besides the Kyla Cries Cologne's also very catchy. They play that live. Dance in the Manatee is a good reason why. That kind of is fair to Midland in sort of this album as a microcosm of as a sampling. The other thing is I always wanted to listen to this album while watching the movie Big Fish, because it channels a lot of the tones and concepts and ideas and lyrics in Big Fish. There's a lot of like fables, tall tales, sort of old wives' tales, literary, not references, but influences like Jack and the Beanstalk and some other stuff like that you think of. And so that movie Big Fish kind of explores a lot of that stuff. It's a Tim Burton movie. It's one of the only Tim Burton movies I really do like. I mean, I like a few of the other movies, but that's among the best. Both Hugh Grant, Ewan McGregor and the guy who plays it, Albert Finney, are both really good in it. But I never got around to doing it. And, of course, it's only 40-some-odd minutes, so you'd have to, play it twice. But anyway. Fables from a Mayfly, What I Tell You These Three Times Is True, Fair to Midland. Kind of their signature record in a lot of ways, number 36. Number 35, Kimbra's Vows, the debut album that came out in 2011. One of, like I said, many debut albums on this list. This is just a terrifically catchy, left of center progressive pop album. Um, the earworms are all over this thing. Cameo Lover, Two-Way Street, and Good Intent. Those three are just banger pop bangers. Settle Down's another favorite, and it's terrific. She uses a lot of sort of rhythms and like vocal arrangements that vocal parts that are like she said she was influenced by rhythm or drum parts, and it just made for just terrific pop songs. Then she covers Plain Gold Ring, that was a Nina Simone song, of course. Wandering Limbs and Withdrawn the Build Up are terrific as well. Those three kind of end the album. I know she had Sam, whatever his name is, on that. He sounded a little bit like Daniel Johns, but he's not on here though. Of course, she re-released this album in 2012 with some other songs. Sally, Can I See You is one of those, but this version is the superior version to me. Call Me is another one that's interesting, a little more textured, more electronic, but yeah, she just she spent many years writing and recording this record. It showed, even though she was pretty young when this came out, like 21 or something like that. 2011. How old is she now? She's in her early 30s, I think. 1990. Yeah, she was 21. So, but she's probably spent the better part of her teen years just writing and recording a lot of this stuff, and it totally was polished. And of course, she was introduced to everyone on the Gortia song, somebody that I used to know. But anyway, I love all her albums. The one that followed, Golden Echo, was on this list. This list. I still kind of go back to this both for nostalgia purposes. And it was actually an album my wife liked a lot, so we bonded upon it. That was the first year we were together too, 2011. But so I have a lot of nostalgia. I almost get into tears thinking about it. I feel like I'm going back. I kind of want to go back to 2011, and miss that period of time. And this album totally brings, like, that whole thing about nostalgia where music brings you back in time. It totally does. And so that in that sense, I'll probably always consider this my favorite Kimbra record, and it has that sort of specialness to me. Anyway, number 35, Vows. Number 34, technically not a debut album, but it's sort of all in effect, for all intents and purposes, the debut album from Ben Sinister from 2005, Through the Broken City, an album I discovered literally like the year after it came out. This is their most prog rock album, Ben Sinister. They have many albums on this list. This is not the first, of course. To me, this sounded like, initially, like I wrote, it's like Jeff Buckley singing with the Mars Volta and Queen. There's a lot of sort of, mathy guitar riffs, and but the vocal lines, the vocal parts that go along with the riffs and the little piano parts totally work throughout this record. I mean, the production is of its budget for the most part. They were a young band at this point. Hell or Shelter, Fool to Love, Preach to the Stars, Tough Love, Truth or Truth. All those songs have these little moments that are so fun, so enjoyable to check out. I honestly, I'd never heard this record, I still would have become a fan of Ben Sinister, but this really set the stage for my being a fan. A little bit like the Deer Hunters, around the same time too. Because it was January 2nd, 2007. Right, this is the day I signed up to Rate Your Music, actually. The day after, so this is one of the first things I even added and talked about and reviewed. But it's a phenomenal debut album. It has the most proggy and most kind of there's a Mars Volta element to it. I mean, there's a lot of bands that try to sound like the Mars Volta. Ben Sinister didn't try to sound like Mars Volta, but they used it. The influence really worked. There's a lot of different members in the band. Dan Moxon, the lead singer and keyboardist / pianist, he's the one consistent member, but they had a bunch of, like, Nabin Rutham, he was with them. All these people have left, sadly. It's kind of weird. And their profile hasn't even been updated, but you just look at Ben Sinister. They're from Canada, of course. There's just nobody who ever finds them for some reason on this site. There's people on the internet and other sites, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc., Instagram, that know them. Not that they're huge. They opened for Flying Colors. When Mike Portnoy said he was a fan, he kind of brought some people in, and his sister's a fan. But Rate Your Music, for whatever reason, never notices or never hears about and never cares for Ben Sinister. But yeah, they had the Warp Pen in 2002. That was an all-instrumental, like, jazz fusion record, and really they define and introduce themselves with Through the Broken City, so it's sort of in effect like a debut album. But anyway, Through the Broken City from Ben Sinister, a concept album of sorts too, from 2005 at number 34, an album I absolutely love. I hope it would come out on vinyl someday. Number 33, Elysium from the Velveteen, the one and only Velveteen album on this list. I like some of their other records, but this is an absolute classic. Now, it came out in 2004, although this says 2005. I probably have the wrong edition on here. Because I have it on like, it's a 10-inch vinyl, which is weird. Yeah, here's the version from 2004. The weird thing about this record is it's an album that doesn't have next to no guitar. If you look here, Judah Nagler, the front man, he doesn't play any guitar. There's bass guitar. And that was what they were kind of going, a little bit like Self trying to do an album all with children's instruments. It's hard to believe, although it's noticeable. The piano really takes the lead, kind of like Weather Report, although that has Jocko at least. But maybe more so like Renaissance in a way. But again, you have a lot of lead bass lines. It's really the piano that, or Elton or Billy Joel songs, something like that. But it, stylistically, it doesn't sound like any of those bands really. The singer Judah is a little bit like Perry Farrell or even Jimmy Necco in a way. But he's got a huge amount of just emotion in his voice. Or a little bit like the Antlers, like the singer from the Antlers, he kind of reminds me of it at times. But Kimbra Obscurant is that's the 12 and almost 13-minute track. That's the most prog rock like. But this is a terrific record from beginning to end where it flows. I mean, that's the biggest highlight, but I would just say it's one of those, greater than some of its parts, and it's just an enjoyable listen. It's epic. It's epic. It's only 46 minutes, but it makes every second of that 46 minutes are used, 46 and 32 seconds. Every second is used, really well. This was an album that I heard, and I mean, I had high expectations because the person who suggested it to me, and I'd say it may have even exceeded the expectations. It was that good. Granted, I'll say I guess it's sort of a mood record in a way, because I never listened to it like addictively, like every day for a week or two. Or I listen to it every 3 to 6 months. So I kind of have to be in the right mood to listen. But if I'm listening to the Velveteen or the new Velveteen album come out, I'll go back to it because I'll remember how much I love this album, Elysium. I'm not sure if it's on Spotify. It probably is, but I need to add it. Anyway, Elysium from the Velveteen. I think it was like their second record. They did a preview. And they have some other records and, Out of the Fierce Parade. They had like a Britpop element on that record. Very Radiohead influence. But, of course, I don't like Radiohead. That's largely to do with Tom York's voice. But, yeah, I mean, it's clearly considered their most popular and their highest rated on Rate Your Music, too. So, go figure. Number 33. All right, we're getting to close to the top 30. And what are we at here for time? 23 minutes. Yeah, well, I'll try to do these 10, then I'll see if I can do another video later. So, just a couple more. The Mars Volta. All right, of course. The Mars Volta finally show up. People are probably sick and tired of waiting to see them if whoever does watch these videos. De-Loused and the Comatorium, another debut album, June 17, 2003. Yeah, I mean, when this came out, it was a breath of fresh air. It's been, talked about ad nauseum. It lives up to the hype. Pretty much the Mars Volta fan, even if they have favorites, likes this album. Even fans that aren't fans of the Mars Volta, like the fans of the at the Drive-In or just sort of casual fans, they like any album by them. It's this typically. My favorites, I mean, Inertiatic ESP and I'd say Televators and Roulette Dares maybe. I don't know. This is definitely a record like the Velveteen's Elysium. It's a total like energy flow. And I mean, the drum work is crazy. John Theodore is crazy and tight. It's math rock. They didn't reinvent any sound, but they took what you could do with salsa and punk and adding it to modern progressive rock sounding, or making it sounding modern. So they were a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways, because prog rock was becoming sort of cliche in a lot of ways. Sometimes still good, but it's the polar opposite of a Spock's Beard or even Dream Theater, in a lot of ways. And they've influenced just countless bands and even styles of music. And it's largely owed, first and foremost, to this record. That being said, when I listen to it a lot, I get a little bit of a sameness to it, is why I probably don't worship it to the same degree that a lot of people do. But, when it comes down to it, it's still an album I love. I still have a very huge amount of nostalgia for first hearing it in 2003. It kind of just opened things up. I thought, well, prog is finally becoming popular again, and for a little while it sort of did with the De-Loused and the Comatorium. But, and I still like it, and if I'm going to listen to a Mars Volta album, this is going to be one of maybe a couple different ones I would go to. So, yeah, you can see it's number 9 in the year 2003. I mean, that's how popular it was, so go figure. Anyway, the Mars Volta, De-Loused and the Comatorium, number 32. Number 31, here we see Anathema again. As I was saying, I love weather systems, but I've still always kind of slightly given the edge to We're Here Because We're Here from 2010. This is the first album they put on K-Scope, and the first sort of album they kind of dismissed their metal element. I mean, it's a little bit like, in a way, like what Opeth has done, actually. Which I seem like a hypocrite in a way, since I love this, but I never was that into Anathema before this. And I don't really care that much for the current Opeth, because Opeth, to me, needs the growling. But it's really more just the songwriting itself. And this album is just melancholy and dreamy as hell. I don't have Falling Deeper on here, but what that really is just a rearrangement of a lot of their other songs with like strings and stuff. But anyway, getting back to We're Here Because We're Here. My favorite tracks on this, Angels Walk Among Us, is very sad. Father, Can You Hear Me? It's like someone talking when they're like a ghost or something like that, or trapped, or there's a lot of spiritual elements to this album, just like with Weather Systems. Hindsight, it has more sound bites and clips that are very spiritual, almost religious. But there's a lot of the sort of crescendos. It was basically the start or the template for what they would become the whole decade. Basically, they released whatever it was, 3 or 4 other records. And that whole thing about Porcupine Tree sort of going on hiatus, and we weren't getting music. They kind of filled a lot of that element, where that sort of heavy, trippy, dreamy, mesmerizing, progressive art rock, And, again, the Kavanaugh brothers both stand out on this. Just those guitar riffs, they kind of repeat and kind of build. It's throughout this record. And so that Universal's another one. I know they named a live album after it. That's another favorite of mine. So We're Here Because We're Here from 2010 from Anathema at number 31. So we're going to stop for now, see if I can squeeze in another list today. My goal is no later to finish the rest of this list, but please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you for subscribing for people that did find the channel. We'll see you next time.